The Chronos Labyrinth. The attic smelled of forgotten lives and the creeping rot of time. Dust motes danced in the single shaft of late afternoon sun, illuminating skeletal outlines of forgotten furniture draped in white sheets. Elias Thorne, a man whose life had always been meticulously ordered, felt an uncharacteristic tremor of apprehension as he pulled back another sheet, revealing a cracked, ornate grandfather clock. His great-aunt Mildred's will had been clear, if eccentric. Her vast, dilapidated estate, nestled in the forgotten valley of Oakhaven, was his, but only if he personally catalogued every item in the house. A proper accounting, Elias. Her lawyer, a desiccated man named Mr. Pocketblanks. Finch had droned of the Thorne legacy, every last speck of it. Elias, a historian specializing in obscure artifacts, had initially found the task tedious. Now, standing before the grandfather clock, a prickle of unease snaked up his spine. It wasn't just old, it was ancient. Dark, almost black wood, intricately carved with symbols that looked less like decorative filigree and more like arcane glyphs. The face, surprisingly intact, was brass, but instead of numbers, strange, elongated symbols marked the hours. The hands were long, skeletal fingers, frozen at an impossible configuration, pointing vaguely inward. And the pendulum? There was no pendulum. Instead, a series of nested, interlocked brass rings, each etched with more of the bizarre symbols, hung motionless within the glass casing. Elias, despite his meticulous nature, felt a sudden, inexplicable urge to touch it. His fingers brushed the cold brass face. A faint hum, like the distant drone of a cicada swarm, resonated through his fingertips. He felt a fleeting disorientation, a sense that the air itself had momentarily thickened, grown viscous. Then it passed. He spent the next hour trying to open the clock, to inspect its inner workings. The back panel was seamless, the front glass was fixed. It was a solid, impenetrable monolith of wood and brass. Frustrated, he moved on, jotting down its description in his ledger. Grandfather clock, unknown origin, unusual symbols, appears non-functional. That night, the dreams began. They weren't typical nightmares. They were lucid, almost hyper-real. He was always in the house, but it was subtly different. The corridors stretched endlessly, twisting in impossible geometries. The rooms shifted, walls appearing and disappearing, and the light, it was always the same strange coppery twilight, like eternal sunset. The only constant was a faint, incessant tick-tock. Not the familiar rhythm of a normal clock, but a staggered, irregular beat, like a dying heart. He'd wake in a cold sweat, the ticking echoing in his ears, convinced he could hear it from downstairs, from the attic. He'd check his watch, always 3 a.m. The incident started small. A book he'd left on the desk would be on the floor, a drawer he'd closed would be ajar. Elias attributed it to the old house settling, or perhaps his own absent-mindedness. But then, things escalated. He was in the library, attempting to decipher a mildewed family tree, when he heard it, a whisper, just at the edge of hearing. His own name, Elias. It was thin, reedy, like old parchment rustling. He froze, pen midair. The house was empty. He was alone. He called out. Silence. Only the faint, irregular tick-tock that seemed to emanate from everywhere and nowhere. The next day, Elias returned to the attic. The grandfather clock seemed to loom larger, darker. He stared at the nested brass rings, the impossible hands. He noticed something he hadn't before, a faint, almost invisible seam running along the side of the clock. He ran his fingers along it, searching. Near the base, his finger found a barely perceptible indentation, a small, intricate button disguised as part of the carving. He pressed it. With a deep, resonant thunk that reverberated through the floorboards, the entire face of the clock swung open, revealing not gears or springs, but a swirling void. It was not darkness. It was an absence of light, a place where reality itself seemed to curdle and twist. And from that void, the irregular tick-tock emerged, louder, more insistent. He peered in, a strange fascination overriding his fear. The air within the void was cold, metallic. And he saw them, faint, shimmering outlines like ghosts of gears, turning slowly, impossibly, without any visible mechanism. And at the very center, a faint, sickly green luminescence pulsed like a dying ember. He reached out, drawn by an irresistible pull. His fingers entered the void. The world shattered. Not into pieces, but into moments. He was simultaneously standing in the attic, his hand in the clock, and also walking through a sun-drenched field, watching a distant, shimmering city, falling through an endless, starry expanse. Each moment was a complete, vivid sensory experience, lasting only a fraction of a second, yet containing a lifetime. He felt the sun on his face, the grit of dirt under his boots, the cold wind of space, the fear of falling, all at once. He gasped, yanking his hand back. The attic was back, solid, familiar. But he was different. The air tasted off, like ozone and something else, something metallic and sharp. His perception was subtly altered. The colors seemed richer, the shadows deeper, and the irregular tick-tock was no longer just in his ears, it was in his bones, a vibration that ran through his very being. He stumbled downstairs, his mind reeling. He needed to document this, to understand. This was beyond anything he had ever encountered in his historical research. This was metaphysics made manifest. He opened his ledger to the page where he described the clock. His blood ran cold. The description was there, but beneath it, his own handwriting continued, in a frantic, spidery script he didn't remember writing. It is not a clock of time, but of times. It does not measure the moments, but consumes them. It hungers, and it learns. Beneath that, a crudely drawn sketch of a man, his face contorted in silent agony, his body stretching and distorting as if pulled apart by unseen forces. It was unmistakably him. Fear, cold and absolute, finally gripped him. This wasn't just a strange artifact. This was a predator, and he had just fed it. Over the next few days, the dreams intensified. They were no longer just confusing. They were horrific. He was trapped in the impossible house, the walls bleeding and shifting. Figures, shadowy and indistinct, writhed in the corners of his vision. They moved with a jerky, unnatural gait, like stop-motion animation, and their whispers, they were clearer now. Tick! Tock! The weave unravels! He opened the door. He gave us passage. The moments, we feast. He started seeing them when he was awake. Glimpses. A flicker in the periphery, a distortion in the reflection of a window pane. He'd spin around, heart pounding, to find nothing. But the irregular tick-tock was always there, a constant companion. He tried to leave. He packed a bag, walked to his car. But as he reached the driveway, the house seemed to stretch. The path lengthened. The trees surrounding the estate swayed with an unnatural rhythm, their leaves rustling a sound like dry, chattering bones. He felt an invisible force, like a vast, unseen hand, gently but firmly guiding him back, turning him around. He couldn't leave, the house wouldn't let him. He was trapped, and the clock was the key. He returned to the attic. The void in the clock's face pulsed with a sickly green light, now stronger, more vibrant. The faint ghostly gears within spun faster, churning. And Elias saw something else, something new. Within the swirling light, fleeting images appeared. Glimpses of events, moments, playing out like miniature, flickering films. A woman laughing in a garden, a soldier falling on a battlefield, a baby's first breath. And then, a shadow would dart across the image, obscuring it, consuming it. He understood. The clock was devouring time, not just measuring it, but consuming the very fabric of existence, moment by moment. And when he had touched it, he had become entwined with its horrific process. He was no longer just perceiving the past. He was experiencing it, fragments of it, as the clock consumed it. The whispers in the house grew bolder, no longer just from the dreams. They were everywhere, behind the walls, under the floorboards. Feed us, feed the Kronos Labyrinth. Kronos Labyrinth. That was what they called it. The clock wasn't just a device. It was a doorway, a nexus, and something was waiting on the other side, something that hungered for time itself. Elias began to research his great-aunt Mildred, her life, her strange obsession with arcane artifacts. He found journals hidden behind a loose brick in the library fireplace. Mildred's hand was elegant, but her words were chilling. The clock has awoken, its hunger grows. I feel its presence, a drain upon the very vitality of this place, this valley. It calls to those who hear its irregular beat. It promises untold knowledge, the sight of all moments, but it lies. It only takes. Mildred had tried to contain it. She had surrounded it with wards, with lead linings, with specific arrangements of crystals, all detailed in the journals. She had built the house, not as a home, but as a cage. And Elias, in his blind curiosity, had opened the door. One night, the ticking became deafening. It vibrated through the entire house, shaking dust from the ceilings, rattling the window panes. The whispers became a chorus, a cacophony of distorted voices, hissing and shrieking. Elias was in the attic. He had nowhere else to go. The clock pulsed, a malignant heart of emerald light. The void in its face had widened, seemed to beckon, and from within it, shapes began to resolve. They weren't solid. They were temporal distortions, beings woven